Welcome back to the Nullify Take, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Blood versus Water. I'm joined here today by Jesse, aka the Kid from Australian Survivor. Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I am doing really good, really excited. Didn't even need coffee to get onto this podcast this morning. I was ready to go because I'm so excited to have you here, a fellow fan of the show who got to play it and actually live out their dream. Do you sometimes have a little bit of that imposter feeling, almost like, wow, I've crossed over to the other side now and I'm getting interviewed by the fans. This is so surreal.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, particularly, I find it when I meet past players. I'm like, oh my gosh, massive fangirling. Like, did a podcast with Johnny Fairplay a couple days ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm speaking to Johnny Fairplay. And yeah, just meeting past Australian Survivor players. I'm a massive fan of the show, and so getting to meet these people but then realizing that they're just absolutely normal humans that have issues in their lives like me. And then I guess because I've experienced being a fan and what it is to want to interact with past players, I really enjoy being able to give back to fans. And when fans come up to me, like I love having a chat with them. And I think sometimes people are a little bit concerned to come up, but yeah, I love having a chat with the fans and stuff because I know how much I appreciated that when I was a fan.
Yeah, I mean, once again, thank you so much for, being open to jump on a new podcast like the one I've got here this season. I reached out to you prior to the season starting. You were one of the first people to get back to me. I always make it clear, I don't want any spoilers. So for anyone listening to this, I was completely spoiler free this season. I didn't know anything that was going on, but I really appreciated you being willing to do this. And even after the season is over, now that you're a celebrity over there in Australia and people know who you are, you're still willing to do this. Also wanted to ask you, you've got a bit of a sporting background, doing triathlons and things like that. Did that sort of play into your factor coming into the show? I mean, both yourself and Geordie, you guys seem to be very competitive coming and playing a show like this. How did that sort of play, and how did being a triathlete, sort of help you, I guess, in the game?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I would say what I've found interesting is a lot of people have thought, okay, he's a triathlete. He's going to be good at the challenges, and it's the biggest load of ball ever. The people that you saw were good at the challenge. I'm not saying I was bad at the challenges. There was quite a few that actually suited me, and I did quite well. But they were often the longer endurance kind of, I guess, sufferfest ones, whether that was the sandbag challenge or the bicep hold first one in merge, or a couple other little ones. I had a Slumdog Millionaire moment with the barrels at one stage because I actually worked in a winery moving barrels for quite a while, so that actually worked in my favor. But actually what I found was really hard was, I've trained my body to be, I guess, an endurance lean machine for many years now. And so my body shriveled on the show. And plus, I didn't really get any rewards for the time I was there. I got 2 rewards while my brother ate every flipping thing on the show, which was hard to watch. So my body really chewed through that, I guess, excess weight. So I put on 5 kilo before the show, but that was gone so quick for me. And my body really shriveled because, yeah, I have trained it to be lean and an endurance machine. But what most of the challenges, especially early, they are super explosive, physical strength based challenges. And so you saw the ex-rugby players, the Jordan, the Josh, the Mark, the Croc, they're just explosive big boys that have that strength. And I think that's definitely where you needed to be this season. I think, if I was to look back, I would probably, if I was to play again the season that I just did with the challenges that just happened, I would have been aiming to add an extra 5 kilo, so 10 kilo all up. And I would have probably trained in a different way. I would have trained far less and far more explosive. And, it definitely would have helped me. But what I did find definitely helped me with my sporting background was simply the mental endurance, and my ability to push through mental discomfort. So, come tribe swap, you've been out there for 2 weeks. And that's a long time, I have full respect to everyone that, played a flipping day out there, because it's tough. But, lasting tribe swap, that's 2 weeks of not eating, being out in the beating sun and suffering. And it's really when you get to that 10 to, 14-day stage where you start to see people break down. Yeah. You've got that mental decision where you go, okay, this is the current situation. I'm not eating. And you have to make the decision that that's okay. You have to make the mental decision that you're not going to think about food, and you're just going to focus on the job you have at hand. And winning, being the sole survivor, means you've got to be able to put up with that discomfort. And a lot of people broke, and that, it wasn't really shown how many people truly broke. Their will to live broke out there because of the food and the lack of food. And I think actually my mental competitive side really kicked in when I started to see people break. It really excited me, because I was like, great, I've spent years and years and years pushing myself past a point, and that I think a lot of people probably haven't been to. And that, I guess, gives me the confidence, and gave me the confidence out there to know that if I'm uncomfortable, I know everyone else is a lot more uncomfortable than I am. And so I think that was one of the key things for me that definitely helped, was the ability to just keep moving forward and know that if I'm hurting, other people are hurting more than me. And I think that's something of Survivor we don't really see, or, those kind of games that we don't really see is what actually happens in people's minds when food starts to break people down. And I guess we saw a glimpse of it, and I think a couple confessionals when I was talking about voting Benny off. And I love Benny, but definitely there were some games being played that I was playing with him there, and he was really struggling with the lack of food. He's a big boy, and that was, definitely something that helped me. My past sporting background is the mental ability to push through that suffering.
Yeah, yeah. So the Ben relationship was an interesting one for me that I obviously observed as a podcaster that was recapping about the show, and I thought your edit really came forward there, and I was like, wow,
Mm.
Jesse is here to play a game. Like, I mean, the fact that you got close to this guy, became friends with him, slept next to him, made him feel real comfortable, but you're like, I am going to slit your throat when the time comes,
Yeah.
was really interesting to see. You played a very low key game. And one of the things that I found very interesting is I had Brianna on for an interview earlier this week. She was really fun to talk to. And she said that her and Sam had a conversation after the season finished. And Sam said to her, with hindsight now, obviously having played this game twice, that when you go out on Australian Survivor or Survivor, your strengths becomes your weaknesses out there, and people actually hold that against you. Now, in
Mm.
your case, I'm kind of wondering if your
Yep.
weakness became your strength here, because your
Yep.
weakness was the fact that you were seen as the young guy. You're
Yeah.
probably not going to play a big game. Can you talk
Yeah.
to that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'd say my whole life, people have, and I'm sure a lot of young people out there have experienced the same thing. A lot of my life, I've been, told I can't do something, or assumed to not have the ability to do something, or assumed to not fit into a certain room with a group of people because of my age. And I guess I was 21 on the show. I guess my appearance probably would suit the characteristic of a standard stereotypical, 21-year-old Yahoo or whatever. When really that couldn't be further from the case. I think what it comes down to is life experience. And I feel like I've, had enough trying times in my life from quite an early age that accelerated my maturity and accelerated my need to grow up, I guess. And that has meant that, I've experienced a lot, and I've done everything from, like, I finished at an international high school, and I was head prefect there, and so that kind of gave me a lot of interaction, dealing with different cultures and different people, and I really enjoyed that. And I found I had an ability to make friends with literally everyone. I was friends with the nerds because I love studying and I love achieving. I was friends with the footy blokes because I love footy. Like, I have a lot of different parts of me, I guess, like I then went to, AIN, Australian National University, and like studied there, and I'm living amongst very high level academics. But then I've got my sport on the side, and then I feel like I've had a lot of different life experiences. I've traveled around the world. I've traveled around like outback Australia a lot since we were young. We grew up camping, done surf lifesaving. Just I guess I went to Cambodia when I was 16 by myself to volunteer in an orphanage. Lots of things like this that just kind of I felt like have added up in my life to give me life experience. And I would say I'm very lucky to have had experienced a lot in life, and perhaps a lot more than some people twice my age. And so I think as a result, when people meet me, they can often underestimate me. And, leading into Survivor, some of the interview questions I was getting was very quickly around my age. And, they were like, interviewers were like, so you're young. Do you think, people are going to underestimate you or whatever? And at first I was kind of like, I don't think so, and then, the questions kind of kept coming, and it made me really start to think, leading into Survivor, and, kind of responding to these questions of, if people underestimate me, it's going to be at their own detriment. And what do you know? Like day one, I walk in and they start calling me the kid, and I'm literally like pissing myself laughing, going like, are you kidding me? You idiots. Like, I guess is what I was thinking. And, it really, really worked. And I instantly recognized it, and I instantly played up to it. If they're going to call me the kid, I'm going to be the kid. And I think it really worked. We had motherly figures around camp. We had fatherly figures. And so I was able to really play into, to the Big Boys Alliance, the Croc, Jordan and Ben. And, I was just the kid to them. Jordan recognized early on my ability, and we started to build a really strong, I guess, strategic alliance that wasn't actually shown barely at all. Jordan and I were actually really close on the show and shared a lot of strategy moving forward in that game. But also Sam recognized me straight away, and she gave me the respect. And that's where we formed that click super early. And so, yeah, day two, I was like, Sami, let's start a tight 2 alliance. And, that's a big risk. Obviously, you're already playing the game, and that's a risk. But Sam recognized in me what no one else really recognized in me. And it was not to underestimate me. I'm here to play. I have physical abilities, but I have a strategic mind for this game. And it really worked because it meant I was able to always have options because people underestimated me as the kid. And so I was able to, I was a key part of that Sophie blindside, Sam and I flipping to the other side. Like really that was, the deciding. And so that meant Soph went home. So we flipped on the big boys. We were able to then flip back to sit under the big boys. Then we went into tribe swap and still butter. Instantly I saw, okay, I've got to butter up to Benny here because, Benny's going to be the big boy that sits at the front. And if I can get him to think that, I'm just the young kid as well, that's just along for the ride, and I want to sit with him, then great. Meanwhile, yeah, my blindside on Benny started from tribe swap, really, a moment one of tribe swap. And I was able to butter up to, of course, like I love Chrissy. I love her to death. And she was so amazing to me out there. And, we really did develop a real relationship. But the hard fact is it's Survivor, and she has such a strong motherly desire. And I was the kid. So, that suited me really well, so much so that, we saw with the Croc vote, she literally chose me over her loved one. Yeah, I guess I was really able to use that underestimated the kid factor basically throughout the entire game. Really, that really only, I guess, came to an end, in merge when I think I recognized early that Josh was smart, even though we really didn't get much time to play with each other. I saw, and there was an interview I did which that they didn't show, where I said very early on in merge, I said, Josh is the only one here that's going to recognize my threat level apart from Sam. And he did. He recognized that, and hence why I left the game. But yeah, Mark saw it as well, and is a pity. I would have liked to play a more under the radar game come merge, but unfortunately I didn't really have much choice, and as a result, I wasn't really underestimated as much anymore.
I'm gonna ask you about a lot of that. I've got a few questions lined up around where your game sort of, I guess, went downwards and the involvement that Geordie would have had in that going in a different direction. We'll definitely ask some of those questions. Sort of interested, just to backtrack here to the Ben vote. A lot of the times when it comes to voting someone out in Survivor, you hear the stereotypical, he's a physical threat. But let's be honest, this was early game. I mean, the guy wasn't going to win every single immunity going to the end of the game. That was the excuse used. But, there must have been more to the fact that you just felt like you couldn't work with him going into the end game of this. So can you talk to that?
Yeah, look, so I'm going to be honest. I'm competitive. Ben's competitive. I walked in on day one and I saw an alpha male, and there's nothing more I like in life than taking down the alpha male and showing them that actually I'm the alpha male. You just didn't realize it. So day one, Benny told me that, he was here to be the sole survivor. And it was that moment that just rubbed me the wrong way, because obviously we're all there to be the sole survivor, but you know what you don't do? You don't go increasing your threat level on day one by telling everyone you want to win the game. And my eyes kind of lit up from that moment and had me thinking. And, there were times throughout the game, I was chatting to my brother, and my brother was building a relationship with Shay, and, he kind of urged me to work with Benny. And so, there were moments where I tried genuinely to see whether this relationship could work. But I didn't feel strategically that we were going down the same path. He was beginning to be disruptive and starting to irritate some people with his actions around camp. And I just couldn't see us moving forward together. And I knew that he was a big dude. He was a big figure, and I think the edit didn't really show how much he was kind of talked about, I guess. No one really thought of him as too much of a physical threat or too much of a strategic threat. He was a large figure in the game. And
was it because there was like an element of an unwillingness to move with people or give in? Like, was it Ben's way or the highway kind of with him?
Look, he was a big character out there. He was a big character, big personality. And that's a better way to put it. He was a big personality. And so I knew that blindsiding him and being the driving factor behind that. And, I guess there'd been a status quo. Benny was comfortable in the majority or whatever. And so I knew that being able to blindside him and would be massive for my resume. And especially so early on, people can say what they want. Everyone's going to have their own opinion, but really the Benny blindside, I believe, was the first major blindside where the sole credit was mine. Every other blindside, there was arguments while it was on TV of like, was it Josh, Jordan, or Mark that, got Sandra out, or was it all four? All of them played a strong contributing factor to it. Whereas the Benny blindside was me and me alone. Obviously I had to have others come along for the vote, but it all started with me. And so it was something that I knew that if I started early on in Tribe Swap, and really it was a 7-day process of getting him out and starting to plant seeds in people's minds to get him out, that it was going to be something. It was going to be a massive blindside that come final tribal, I would have a lot to talk about and be able to show to the jury just how strategic I was without anyone noticing. And
you basically threw a challenge to get it done as well, which
yeah,
is something that a lot of people may overlook. And I know in Australia, culturally, it probably isn't the greatest thing to throw a
yeah,
challenge. Like you always go hard all the
yeah.
time. But as a massive fan of Survivor, I realize that that is a legitimate strategy and something that you push from your end to actually make this vote happen. But I do want to move on and ask you a question about yourself and Sam were involved in two major blindsides before the merge. Both blew up in your face because of twists in the game. How do you feel about these twists that we see in Australian Survivor? Where I know Geordie benefited from a twist similar to that later on in the game, but if you take that out of your thinking, and you don't have the loyalty to your brother as someone that benefited from one of these twists, how do you look at these twists as a player, and how does it influence your ability to play a more fluid game?
In all honesty, I absolutely hate the twists. When a player's voted out, the player's voted out. I hate the twists, and I was on the receiving end of, copping a lot. A lot of others got rewards and received, stayed in the game. Even like, and it was me that did all the hard work to get them out, and that is so dangerous. Like that first Benny Blinds, obviously you got Sophie first up. Then you've got that Benny blindside. I not only was that so devastating for me, it was so risky. It was such a horrendous situation. They showed in one of my confessionals beforehand. I was like, the worst possible situation for me tonight is that Benny somehow is saved. And what do you know? He was saved. That vote really cooked me, like, afterwards,
Do you
emotionally.
feel
And
like it's sorry for interrupting your train of thought
yeah,
here. Do you feel like it's counterproductive to have these twists? Because Josh spoke about it a little bit, where he said Jonathan kept asking them, when are you going to make these big moves? But they were so afraid of when someone was going to be saved next. So it kind of prevents you from making that next big move in the
yeah,
game.
exactly. It makes you start to seriously think, because it puts you at a major risk,
Mm.
of whether you are going to perform a blindside again, or if you just sit in the majority. And there was a lot of talk about there being far too many twists and it impacting the game too much. It really does start to affect your train of thought. But for me, in the end, as we saw, the first Benny blindside. Next day, I throw another challenge and so I guess I got over it. If I'm going to be honest, you know what I mean. It's Survivor. Build a bridge, get over it. You can't control it. The production is going to do what they're going to do to build a TV show. They're going to try to make it interesting. I don't like the twists, but at the end of the day, I can't control that. That's Survivor. I think, yeah, they are counterproductive for the game, and they do. The pure survivorists out there, I think, understand that it affects the game in a poor way. And yeah, I was on the receiving end of a lot of bad luck. If
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a shame, and I mean, obviously now when you go into Australian Survivor, you expect that. I so hope that there is a better way for them to do things. I saw them improving on what they did on Brains versus Brawns the previous season, which I thought was even more twist heavy.
yeah,
But yeah, again, it's one of those things. Now, as a big fan of the show, obviously you've seen some of these players play before. What was your feeling about these players returning? And obviously the biggest one of them all, Sandra, the two times Queen being out
yeah,
there as well. What was your thoughts when you realized you were going to play with them?
yeah, yeah. Thankfully, I'd done, like, my brother and I prepared. You get an opportunity to play Survivor, you prepare. We prepared physically, we prepared mentally, and we studied a lot the show. And thankfully, I knew Sandra and I knew her game. And I think there were quite a few players out there that they hadn't even watched Australian Survivor. But yeah, thankfully, I knew Sandra. And look, I never felt too threatened by her, because early on, she really made it clear her only goal was to sit in the majority. That's it. As long as the vote wasn't on her, she didn't care. Tell her where the vote's going, and that's all she cares about. And that's good, and that's predictable. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So I was never too worried about her, but 100% I did want her gone, because she she does have a side to her that you don't know what's going to happen because she's won the game twice. You know what I mean? That you can't have that sitting around camp. You can't have someone that's played 7 times, won the game twice in this game. And so I was one of the few advocates to get her out. There were very few of us that were willing to risk that. I guess people were scared to vote her out. Like legit, like she had such an aura about her or whatever. And they were so scared to vote her out, and I just didn't understand that. And so, yeah, literally that first vote, that first night when Kate went home, Sandra was supposed to go home, but Juicy blew himself up and decided to blindside himself. And so we tried to put the votes on him, and he played his idol, flushed his own idol. And I think people wanted to keep her around because they felt that moving on in the game, she would be a threat and a shield. But Sandra's not the kind of person you want to keep around as a threat and a shield. Like, she's smarter than you, like times 10. So yeah, I didn't really understand that. But look, she was always going to leave the game. She was always going to leave the game. It was just a matter of when finally enough of the majority got on the same page to get her out. And that came in day 16. So I wasn't too worried about her. I first saw Andy when we were, walking in, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Andy. Which is kind of, funny as a fan of the show. If you know his story, you know why it was funny. And so I kind of immediately I saw him and I thought, okay, he could be a good guy to butter up. But yeah, we were split. We were put on opposite tribes, and then he was gone anyway. And Mark and Sam, I thought they played phenomenally in terms of their ability, which again I explained at Final Tribal was kind of what the part of my speech that they showed was that Mark's ability to remain underestimated and not a major threat, and Sam's the same, is the fact that they just straight up, they owned, look, yeah, we've played the game before, but you know what? We're here, we're meeting new people just like everyone else. And so they did a really good job at removing that threat. And so much so that I felt that, with Sam, that I would rather be aligned with her because I felt like I wanted to work with someone smart to get through this game. And so, yeah, me and her clicked, and I was able to use that ability of, that her having played the game before, use that knowledge to progress my game. And I think it was similar for Mark on the other side. Others like to work with him because he was smart, and it worked well for them. Yeah.
Did you learn anything from playing with Sandra that you would keep? I mean, there was the Sandra lessons were throughout the season. Everybody kept saying Sandra told us this. What did Sandra tell you out there that you sort of think maybe you could use this in the future? The ghost of Sandra.
Yeah, honestly, firstly, the biggest thing I flip and hate was how the amount of times they showed people going, oh, Sandra told us not to tell someone about an idol. Like, are you kidding me, bro? Like, have you watched this show before? Like, why do you need Sandra to tell you that? Like, I was just embarrassed for the show and the fans at home that kept coming up. But the one good piece of advice I got from Sandra, there's a couple. One I can't really repeat on air because it wasn't really appropriate for public consumption. But number two was when we are walking out to challenges, basically her lesson to me was walk really slowly. It's 40 plus degrees out there. You've got no fuel. She really taught me to not give shit about the cameras and the TV production. Basically, do what I have to do to look after my body to get myself to the end. Don't care if they tell you to hurry up, if they tell you, I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing something wrong, don't listen. Do what you've got to do. Push the boundaries of TV production to the absolute limit to benefit you, because that's part of the game too, looking after yourself. And that was, definitely something I picked up early on. And I probably would have, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I understand it's a TV show. I feel lucky to have gotten on. And obviously I want every chance of going on again as well. So I want to do the right thing by them. But yeah, learning that, that's coming from Sandra, someone that's played, however many times that, yeah, that was a really important lesson. And one thing I would, for people that potentially may get to play the game in the future is look after your body and as your number one priority.
You know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like my managing director at work when he says to me, Chris, you don't need to be in meetings if it wastes your time. Just walk out of it. I'm not the managing director. I can't just walk out of it. But I mean, she obviously has this aura about herself where, and she's played it so many times where I'm sure she could have pushed the limits on that stuff a little bit more than yourself, like you mentioned, being new and
Yeah.
potentially wanting to be in the good books of production. I did want to ask you, obviously you played a phenomenal. I thought you played a phenomenal game, a game that would have taken you in a normal season a lot deeper than what it did. But this season was a little bit more complicated because you went out there to play with your brother Geordie, and when you and Geordie got back together, there was an urgency about both of you to
Mm.
make big moves, play hard, very fast. You may only get one chance out there to play the game, so as a fan, I appreciate that. Do you feel like playing with Geordie, he was a bit of a bad influence on you in regards to that? And like, if you didn't have Geordie there, how would you have played it differently at that stage in the game?
Yeah, look, this is such an interesting, I guess, feature of Blood vs. Water. And I think what you got to see between, and why I guess Sam and Mark and me and my brother were featured so much in that storyline was featured so much was because we captured Blood vs. Water, I guess.
Mm.
Coming Tribe Swap, Sam and I played a flipping hectic game and we were fighting tooth and nail to stay in the game and to execute blindside, blindside, blindside. And you saw that, we had 5 blue members and they had 8 red members. They'd gone to Tribal Council 2 or 3 times through Tribe Swap. We'd been however many times. They'd been every reward. We hadn't eaten a thing. Like, you couldn't get 2 different game types. And so what you had was my brother who'd been sitting in the majority the entire time and hadn't really been a part of a move yet. Whereas I was approaching Merge going, I've got the biggest resume in this game by far. I'm now ready to chill. But yeah, my brother felt like he needed to make some moves. And so coming into Merge, he'd already started to plant seeds in people's minds and or had already started to, he told Mark that Josh wanted him out and he told Josh that Mark wanted him out. So he'd already started to, I guess, spin a few tails. And as we saw, and I learnt post the show, is my brother isn't the greatest at keeping his mouth shut and isn't the greatest liar. And if I may say so, isn't the greatest, I guess, understated strategic player of Survivor. And so, but I trusted him with everything. We went into the game saying, we're going to stick together to the very end. Our goal is for both of us to sit at the end. And I think, if you're going to get the chance to play Survivor, like, don't go on there and play safe. Like, we were like, if we're going to get this chance, let's flip and do something that will be remembered forever. And that's 2 brothers sitting at the end. And so, we were willing that if one of us makes a mistake, the other goes home, we can live with that. And so coming to Merge, I was super keen to go, great. I'm going to jump into this majority that, we already had kind of forming because I had my brother over there. Sam had Mark over there. I'd been working with Jordan previously in the game. You got Josh over there. Great. We already had Merge majority sorted, in Tribe Swap. And so we knew we just had to get to Merge and Sam and I were going to, plan on chilling for quite a few votes and just sit in that majority because we knew that our threat level had increased and that needed to reduce for a while. And I didn't need to make moves because I already had enough to sit at Final Tribal and explain that I should be sole survivor, I felt. So I was a bit shocked when I came into Merge and, my brother kind of comes to me and he's like, Mark wants Josh out. Josh wants Mark out. Mark has an idol. He then goes and tells Sam about it. Sam didn't know about it. That starts to fracture relationships and trust. And I instantly had to jump on board, right? I had to jump on board my brother's plans. And he was beginning to, I guess, panic a little bit. He had a lot on his cards, and I had gone, okay, I've executed however many blindsides very close to perfection. I feel like I can execute another. And once a plan kind of gets out there, if you don't chop the head off, the head will come back and bite you. We'd kind of passed that point where I could kind of tell my brother, no, this is not the right time. I'd already gotten him to wait a few votes. When Mel went home, we almost did it then, and I had to get him to hold back. It was a little bit too soon, and so I kind of had to jump on this plan and try to execute it with him, and I had to keep him calm and focused on the job at hand. And I had trusted that Sam and Mark would vote with us, but I knew that my relationship with Sam was beginning to be strained because she saw me moving to my brother, and that my allegiance was to him. And that's, again, why I gave her that idol, why I trusted her in that moment, was I knew that our relationship was being strained. And so I wanted to show her one last bit of trust and show, really we are working together. And, obviously that didn't work, but I recognized our relationships were being strained. But what I didn't know, Mark did not trust my brother, because I didn't know the previous history that had happened on the other side. And so I knew I was copping votes that night, but I trusted that Sam and Mark were going to stick with us and we were going to form a new majority. So, look, in the end, my brother's previous game and my lack of knowledge about that game impacted the outcome. And that was, really difficult and frustrating for a little while, post returning from the game. I had moments where I wished I was selfish, and I wished I had not shown such allegiance to him, and I had played my own game, because I truly do think that, if I'd stuck closer with Sam and kind of I see, but then I can't even say it. Like, the idea of letting my brother destroy his own game.
Can I add something to this? Because obviously there's some really big things that happened even before you went on to Survivor, with losing your
Yeah,
stepmother,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
pulled you closer to your
yeah,
brother out there as well. I think people may forget that. And then I've got a brother as well. I've got a younger brother, and my younger brother always used to look up to me quite a lot when I was a kid,
yeah,
like, because I'm about 2 years older than him, and wherever I went, he would follow, kind of, because that's just the
yeah,
bond that brothers have.
yeah,
So obviously those kind of things would have, like, I mean, I think it's so difficult to look at this and say, man, like, I wish I did some different things here, because I
yeah,
think I would have, like, me and my brother fight all the time, but if someone tries to come in between it, like, we would have each other's back. It's just that
yeah.
brotherly thing, so I get it.
Yeah, like everything, my brother and I have always been close. We've gone through a lot of things in our life together. And I think, with the passing of, our stepmom, who really was our mum, I hate the word stepmom, but she really was our mum. And that just
Mm.
brought us so much closer together. And, it's this moment of realizing that family is all you've really got in this life, and it can be taken away at any moment. And it was just this shared moment of, we've been through things together that no one else will ever know. And, again, yeah, we fight. Yeah, he pisses me off so much sometimes, like, we both rub each other the wrong way, but shit, like, there is nothing I wouldn't do for that bloke. And I guess that came out on the show, like, we were willing to do anything for each other. And, I'm so glad that I stuck to that. And, yeah, it arguably cost me my game, and maybe I could have stayed longer in the game. But you know what? Like, I wouldn't change a thing.
Quick question, and we're going to talk about the Sam Steele, because to me, it's going to go down as obviously the biggest move ever in Australian Survivor, one of the biggest moves ever in any Survivor. So both yourself and Sam are cursed with this, because you're going to be remembered for either her pulling the move off or you being on the receiving end of it. Has Eric Reichenbach spoken to you at all? Have you spoken to him? Like, you guys are kind of, I look at you as almost like, it's different situations, but there is some similarities in both being what fans would see as outplayed. But I mean, you had your reasons for why you did what you did. Like you said, you wanted to build trust, and it's 50-50. We look at the fishbowl from outside and we know everything that's going on. As a player, you don't have all the information. Um, I guess what I wanted to come to is like Eric Reichenbach, in my opinion, is forever going to be remembered. He came back, he played another time. I don't think, even though you've been on the receiving end, it's too juicy a storyline to steal Juicy's nickname here, not to have you come back and redeem yourself in a redemption season, in a second chance season.
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously love another chance to come play. I think, to be honest, my biggest concern, post the game was how this was going to air. And I really wanted to approach it as gracefully as possible, like obviously fans and stuff are going to have their opinion out there, but you know what no one wants to hear about or no one wants to care is someone go and defend themselves publicly. Like at the end of the day, I have my reasons for what I did out there. And the thing is, no one's ever really going to understand that because firstly, Sam and I were the only ones there in that moment. And, I guess plus the cameraman. And Sam and I had a 30-day relationship and I had strategic plans for the way I wanted to move forward. And for me, again, it's just one of those moments where I'm willing to – it was one of those moments where I'm like, if this pulls off, we've won this game. And, it's a 50-50 flip of the coin. And, even Sam has said, time and time again that she was still trying to toss up her options, right to the end. And you saw that at Tribal Council. She didn't know whether to flip or not. And so if that had pulled off, I'd be sitting here going – I made one of the ballsiest moves in Survivor history and it worked. And now I'm sitting here as sole survivor.
Can I bring like another big move up? I know we go back to this guy quite a lot because he had some ballsy moves while he was out there. Russell Hans plays his idol for poverty in Heroes versus Villains. Yeah. Like 2 or 3 votes in. If that didn't play off him convincing Tyson, who is a great player of this game, he fooled Tyson that season. Yeah. So, I mean, does this make Tyson not a great player? Yeah. No, it doesn't. So he convinced Tyson to basically effectively vote himself out of the game, which could have been seen as one of these big mistakes in the game. But if that didn't go his way, Russell Hans looks like a fool for the rest of his Survivor career and he's out. You know what I mean? Like, so that's how thin the margin is between being successful at this game and being a legend. Like Tony Vlachos, 2-time winner, 1-time first vote off. Like it's so... You can't, in my opinion, in any case, as a fan, you can't look at it as results only, like what happened results-wise. It's understanding the intent behind what it is that you try to do. And one of the other things I wanted to also talk about was you remained extremely calm, like even when blindsided at Tribal Council, which I thought took massive restraint. Like, I mean, it could have been so easy for you to just blow up Sam's game right there. Yep. What went through your head there in regards to not blowing her game up?
Yeah, I think what was interesting was we saw, well, in that moment, we saw the 2 differences between my brother and I. So, obviously I was starting to see the votes. I knew I was copping votes that day. And, I was scared, but again, I was willing to risk that. And even if I had the idol, I wasn't playing it. So I started to see the votes read out and, I saw for Josh, for me or whatever. And they showed a clip of me smiling because I was like, I love this shit. I'm playing Survivor. I'm risking it. I'm about to pull off a massive blindside. I've sorted my brother's rubbish out. I'm about to pull off a massive blindside and send Josh home. And then I see that fifth vote come out. And like my brother just leans forward and, he's like, oh, shit. But instantly my brain's just gone into absolute overdrive. And I'm like, okay, I'm technically still in this game. I'm still around these people. I still have an influence in this game. And all of a sudden, and again, if it wasn't blood versus water, things may have gone very differently. But I knew my brother was still in this game. And I have knowledge that no one else does. And I know that Sam has that idol. And so I wanted to, my brother already knew because I told him during Tribal Council, but I wanted to reassure him and let him know Sam does have this idol. So I could give him a piece of knowledge that was power in this game and he could use as a weapon either against Sam and Mark or with Sam and Mark. And so I was just trying to ensure that, no bridges were burnt. My approach to Sami was I wanted to threaten her to the absolute limit so that she understood that me showing her this grace and this respect for her move, because again, I didn't really hold any, I had no personal bad feelings to her. I knew she was a good player and I didn't expect her to pull off that move so early, but I knew that there had to be a reason for it. You know, she doesn't make stupid, like, for such a big move to happen like that, there had to be a massive reason for it. So I respected that. And so I wanted to let her know that I have knowledge about her game, that she has an idol, and I could severely negatively impact her game right now. But I wanted to use that as a threat for her to know she has to now work with my brother. You know, my brother's no longer a threat in this game. You've removed me. My brother, use him as a number, was all I was thinking. Was I need to buy my brother some time, because if I don't, you know, he'll be gone quickly. And so, yeah, I wanted to show Sam and Mark some grace in the way I exited by not blowing their game up. And I wanted to give my brother that knowledge and some power to use moving forward. So, again, my mind just went into overdrive strategic mode and doing all I could in that moment to keep my brother safe, move him forward in the game, and let Mark and Sam know that you better work with my brother, or yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like they once again at that point in the game would have underestimated you because they were targeting Geordie, not you. You became the vote because Geordie won
Yeah.
the immunity. And I do feel like, I'm a big Geordie fan. I love the drama and the chaos that the Joker brought to the screen, but I feel like if you were in that same position and Geordie left, you had a better ability to ingratiate yourself back in with the tribe and potentially go further. What would have been the plan if Geordie was voted out at that point and you would have had to scramble? How would you have strategized from that point forward, and who would you have worked with?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, moving forward, again, what really, depending on who you ask or whatever was happening, again, I don't really know what was happening, but from what I've been told anyway, the edit may not have been truly accurate there, and actually I was the target.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, my brother did win immunity, so it kind of solidified that. Um, I don't really know what was happening there, but either way, moving forward, I would have 100% kept working with Mark and Sam. I think um, I would have just had to play that under the radar game. And, I'd already shown my allegiance to Sam, and, Mark and I got along, and Mark trusted me. And I would have just had to, I would have receded to that number place and just bided my time, because I still had numbers on my side. KJ and Michelle, they were numbers that I had. And people, only really Sam knew that. I was great mates with Jordan, so I've got that option. I had an old relationship with Juicy Dave from OG Red. I would have felt like I still had options in this game and I could have moved forward. And I would have taken a different approach to my brother. I wouldn't have tried to cause chaos. I would have tried to build trust. And chaos worked for my brother for quite a while, and he got a bit lucky with that. Being saved and redemption, and a couple other things, and a good few immunity wins. But in the end, his untrustworthiness kind of led to his downfall. And I think that would have been something I probably would have approached slightly differently, and I would have tried to build trust and be a safe number. And yeah.
Yeah. You're the first person that I've got on at the moment that I'm interviewing that have actually been on the jury. So I'm really interested to ask you a little bit about the jury portion of this game. When the end vote happened, obviously you had Mark that went in there, and I think everybody knew he played the best game. So I wasn't surprised to see the amount of votes he got. But thinking about Josh as a player this season, I was a very big fan of Josh. I actually rated Josh probably the most capable player out there that we just didn't see. We didn't see on the edit how big of a player he was. If Josh made the end, I take it it's a foregone conclusion. If we, took Mark out and Josh is in there, Josh wins again. Also, probably pretty close to unanimous, I would assume, or he would win at least. What would have happened if Josh and Mark went up against each other? What was the thoughts in the jury about that? Because to me, that would have been the ultimate showdown.
Yeah, this is a common question. And Mark and Josh, obviously you're going to have some different opinions, I'm guessing. Mark v. Josh, Mark wins still, because and again, we didn't see a lot of it. And again, that's the other thing is, people can have their opinions eating their chips, sitting down on the couch, right? But
Yeah.
we're the flipping ones out there playing, and we have the relationships. We know all those things that happen in the other 47 hours, that aren't shown on TV. And there were times at tribal council when Josh would rub the jury the wrong way. He's a confident guy, and I respect that. But often it would come across in a way that negatively influence the jury. And again, people do. We're given $500,000 to someone. Yes, we respect the game. Most of us respect the game, that it's outlast, outwit, outplay. But at the end of the day, we also do want to give the money to someone that's not only going to benefit from the money, but that we like.
Mm.
Um, and he did start to rub some people the wrong way. I think strategically, again, Mark's argument of being able to use Josh as a shield is just a brilliant argument. When you start to analyze his game and the moves he was able to play from behind Josh, was phenomenal. I think Mark had a greater hand in removing key players from the game than Josh did. I think Josh was simply a part of a strong majority. And, there's arguments both way. I respect, again, I said Josh was the one that I thought was going to recognize my threat level early on. And so, I recognize that he's a really smart guy. And I think, he could perform well in the challenges. He clearly lasted. And, he is very smart, but yeah, just to me, that Mark's ability to play a second time and be so underestimated is something, when you start to think about it, is pretty phenomenal. Ex Special
Yeah.
Forces soldier, like that ability. How did he do that? Um,
And apparently, one of the things I had Josh on yesterday actually for an interview, and Josh actually himself said, listen, Mark probably played the jury better than I did. And he said
yeah,
that the way that Mark would have pitched the end, he's a great talker. And I don't know if
yeah,
I would have been able to counteract that. So Josh also kind of lean the same way that you're sort of explaining it here. One of the things that to me was interesting is Josh mentioned that there was a whole different side to Mark that we as an audience, because I love Mark,
yeah,
don't get me wrong, like both of
yeah,
them, like I couldn't care less who of them won. I thought they both were great
yeah,
representation. Obviously, you won a great player to win this season, but he said there was a whole different side to Mark that we didn't see, like him being a lot
yeah,
more emotional, not emotional, but more emotionally aware and being
yeah,
more vulnerable out there, which I think we saw a snippet of it at the end with the River story, but that was pretty much
yeah.
it this whole season.
Yeah, I'm amazed by, like, obviously with my idol situation or whatever. Firstly, I guess I'm grateful I didn't come out looking too stupid or whatever. And pretty much everyone that sees me, they're like, "Oh, are you Jessie from Survivor?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then they're like, "Oh, that's Sam," and they hate her. And it's similar with Mark. People's first thing, when they talk to me, they're like, "Why did you vote Mark? Like, we hate him." And I'm like, I guess because as well, I've got my understanding of Mark. I played the game with him. I've been
Mm,
friends with him for however, long. I know Mark. I know his heart. I know Sam. I know Sam's heart. I know they're ripper people. They're super generous, super loving, super caring. We had a great time with Mark out there. He's funny as hell. He's a great bloke. But
mm.
clearly, a lot of that did not come across to the viewers, which I didn't really, I guess, gauge, because again, I'm looking at it through my lens of my knowledge of them. But yeah,
Like I
Mark,
said, I think the edit makes or breaks you sometimes because they gave him such a one-sided edit, like, if it moves, I can kill it, or having a
yeah,
concealed weapon. It was a lot of this military talk where I think maybe it
yeah,
didn't translate well to the everyday Joe watching the show. And then obviously I think Mark is guilty by association because what happened to Sam this season, I am still up until today shook to my core that people can go that hard on someone for making a game move out there. And I mean, if there's anybody who should be pissed off, it's you. You should be the one out there being
yeah,
angry. But you've
yeah,
got all these people going so hard at Sam
yeah,
that I'm really gutted by it because I've reached out to Sam not this season, previous season, when I was podcasting for a different channel, and we were doing recaps on the previous season, and she was the nicest person, like one of the nicest
Yeah,
Australian survivors to deal
yeah,
with. She didn't
yeah,
end up coming on, which I now understand why, because she was lining up to come onto this, so probably didn't want to get a lot of her
yeah,
strategic thinking out on a
yeah,
podcast. But nice person. Mark has been nothing but kind to me this
yeah,
season as well. Having a chat with him in between, like, again, I didn't know anything, but he was willing to come on. He was the first person to do this podcast, so
yeah.
I can tell just genuinely great people. And the people who listen to this podcasts, I don't think there are those people. I've got a theory that it's very casual viewers that also watch maths over there,
Mhm.
and that's the type
Yeah,
of
yeah, that's the type of
viewer that
people.
has that type of hate like in their heart. That's what I think
Yeah,
anyway.
for sure. Like, one of the key things I recognized early that Sam could cop some, and one of the funny things is Sam and I played a very similar game. You know what? Like, I
Mm.
was pretty flipping ruthless out there too. And, if I'm honest, a lot of the ruthless, they didn't show a single one of my reading outs because most of them were far too ruthless for public consumption. So, I was saved by the edit in a lot of ways, like I could have been on the receiving end for a lot of that brutality. But the fact is, game respects game, like you can't be mad at Sam, a lot of stuff happened around that situation, which really, wasn't aired because there's some uh, discrepancies. And so I knew she was going to cop hate for it. And so again, like, I've tried hard, I've tried consciously to publicly demonstrate to people that, we are good, we are friends. Exactly as you said, if anyone deserves to hate Sam, it's me. And me and my brother again at the end, when we're both asking questions to Mark, and Mark's explaining, me and him copped it the worst from Sam and Mark out of anyone. Like, we were on the receiving end of going to war against them out there in Survivor, and they got the better of us. So if anyone deserves to hate them, it's flipping us. So if we
Mm.
can show them love, if we can respect them, if we can understand that there's game and then there's personal lives, no one deserves a death threat. No one deserves to have their kid threatened to be killed. Like, it's honestly ridiculous. And
Wow.
and the mental, my brother copped a lot this season. I copped a lot at the end. There's People don't understand, we are just humans trying to live our lives. You're
Mm.
seeing a TV edited show and you think you have the right to contact us and tell us we deserve to end our lives. Like, I just can't even begin to fathom that. And the mental impact and toll that it has taken on a lot of the players, and the impact it's going to have for months to come is devastating. And I don't think people understand the impact that they're having on human lives, and it's very negative.
What's your advice to people like myself or others out there that still want to play Survivor in the future? Like, what should we do to prepare ourselves for the onslaught that is going to come our way?
Yeah, so obviously prior to Survivor, yeah, you have a couple interviews with the show psychologist, and one of the key topics that you kind of cross over, and he's trying to check is, are you in a mental place that you can cope with the aftermath? And of course, I still remember where I was and still remember doing that interview. And I still remember being like, oh, yeah, for sure, man. Like, you're just trying to get on the show. So, of course, you're like, yeah, man, I'll be fine. Like, I've got my support around my family around me and stuff. But I just guarantee you, there is nothing on earth that can prepare you for firstly watching the show and realizing that it's not a documentary about your experience. It's a TV show that's been produced based off your experience. That's the first major shock for everyone, and understanding that being able to learn to separate your reality. We've got our experience, and only us 24 will ever know what that experience was out there. You've then got the experience of watching a show, but what you need to learn, and you need to develop the skills very quickly, is to not give a shit about anyone's opinion. And the sooner you can do that, the better you will be. And I'd say only towards middle/end of the show did I feel like I was in a place where I really don't care, like still I get people coming up to me in the street and they feel very free to rip into me and share their opinion. And I think once you understand, and I guess you almost have that self-confidence and go, you know what, I was the one out there playing, you weren't,
Mm.
like, uh, and trust that, they don't know what your experience was. So learning to, you can't read comments. Don't bite. Don't ever bite. Like you feel very tempted, especially early on, to start responding to people and defending. And then you have a look and they got 7 followers. Who honestly cares? I think, just you can't read the comments, turning off your Instagram notifications. You go onto Instagram, you do a post, you share something because you do want to share with the public, something, your thoughts, and then you turn your notifications off. You don't look. Otherwise, you're going to go into a rabbit hole.
And also, I think, as someone that's managed a lot of contact centers and customer services people in the past, like we always used to say, you get the negative people on Google reviews, you get the negative people online, like you hear more of that, and it can form this warped reality where you think everybody feels this way. But it's like you said, that's that troll account with 7 followers that are biting at you. And I think another thing for people who are listening to this podcast, about 70% of my listeners are from the US, believe it or not. We don't know how they get the episodes, but they get it. And I think for those that are in the US that are listening to this, just put it into perspective. The US has got over 300 million people. Australia's got, 20 or 30 million people. So you're a lot more recognizable in Australia compared to a Survivor player over in the US, where no one will know afterwards because only 6 million people out of a 300 million people country watch the show over there, which is, it's just phenomenal. I mean, that ratio is completely off.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, in saying that, there's also been a lot of positive stuff. I think my brother and I got very solid edits that, we're grateful for, because honestly, you're at the mercy of the production. And I think we did come across as, mostly who we actually are. And so I think people, do, I'd say 90% of the time in public, people are very nice and they're like excited to speak to you. And I love that because, again, I'm just a 22-year-old bloke at uni, like all the other uni students out there. So I'm very happy to chat. And same for my brother. It's you do cop most of it online, most of the trolls. And once you realize that it blows over and, you're never going to see this person in real life, they don't actually care. You're going to go back to your normal life. They're going to wake up tomorrow and not even remember that they've decided to tell you to kill yourself. Just remembering, grounding yourself, bringing yourself back to your family. That's why I'm so glad I've lived with my brother, through all this. We're able to be there for each other, remind each other what matters in life, and I think surrounding yourself with your family and your close friends who really know who you are, and you'll be fine.
One last question. I always like to end this on a positive. What will you remember about the show? What's the positive thing, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when you've got your first kid on the way, what would you sit down and talk to them about?
Yeah, so there was this scene which we so thought was going to be shown because, literally the cameramen were pissing themselves laughing, and maybe that's why, because the cameras were jumping up and down. But so Jordan and I have the clue for the idol, and where George just he was quite paranoid, and it was very funny. And so we're at the well, we're chatting, and my brother, it was far too obvious, but he just wanted to. He was like Gollum. He just wanted to go off and find the ring. All he cared about was finding this idol. And it was just this moment of us standing around the well. We're wearing our merge buffs. We've got a clue to an idol. This moment of not taking it all too seriously and kind of going how nuts is this? We are playing Survivor, 2 ordinary blokes. We're at merge. We've got a clue to an idol. We're right on the edge. I know I'm copping votes. This moment of we are living. This is living. And just this really special moment that I think I'm so glad to have gotten to share with my brother. And, we're going to be telling kids, grandkids for years and years and years. And they're going to get so sick of hearing about the time we played Survivor, but shit, it was funny.
Has he allowed you to drive the Isuzu yet?
We don't even have it yet.
Oh, you don't have it yet? Oh, no.
Ridiculous. We're hoping it comes in the next week or so because, yeah, we were told we were supposed to get it when the episode aired, and then we didn't get
Yeah.
that. Then they were like, when the show
Jeez.
finishes, and then they're like mid-April, and so,
I hope
hopefully.
Geordie applies for a sales role at Isuzu, man. The way he sold that thing, like,
Well,
he's got a
it's
talent.
it's so funny because literally going into the show, we were just like, we've always watched the car rewards and just been like,
Yeah.
oh, we do love
Curse.
cars and how epic it would be to win. And so, as well, you saw my emotion at Final Tribal, like that was fully genuine. Like I started crying, like I was like, this is just incredible. Like my brothers actually won the car. And yeah, we were so flipping stoked.
That's awesome. Listen, Jesse, it's been great talking to you.